Hi everyone, today the show is all about journalism. My guest has been working in the broadcast industry for around 30 years, so she's super experienced and she knows what's what about the industry. She's a journalist at BBC Radio Leicester. Welcome, Jo Hayward. Hi, Jo.
Hi, hello, great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's so good to have you. I'm so excited to have a fellow journalist come join me on my YouTube show. It's so exciting. So, Jo, you've been a journalist for quite some time. And obviously the landscape's changed over the years. So I was wondering if you could give us a brief insight into how you started, if there's still some correlation with that now as an opportunities, and how did you work your way up the ladder?
Yeah, I think I was quite blessed because I knew I'd wanted to be a journalist for a long time. And where you go in doesn't necessarily dictate where you're going to end up. I think that's a really important lesson. And I knew sort of before I went to university, and I knew I wanted to go to university, where I wanted to be, and that I did want to write and I did want to report. So I aimed first at local papers. We got a
daily. You were quite young. Sorry for interruption. You were quite young. Yeah. What I'm trying to understand is like, how did you know at that such a young age, 16?
If I'm really honest, I wasn't very good at anything other than writing stuff. English was my best subject. I loved writing. I'm a very curious person. And I was failing every other exam, left, right, and centre. But I knew I loved books, I loved writing, and I was curious. And you don't need all of those to be a good journalist, but curiosity, I'd say, is the right one. And I kind of knew that I loved reading the papers, I loved watching the news on the telly, and I could see myself there. So I was lucky at an early age that I wanted to do that. And I could then kind of plot a little bit of a path, if you like. And I knew from talking to people, I wrote to a reporter at a local paper when I was about 16, and I knew I needed to get a foot in the door because even then it was very competitive. She was awesome. She got me in for some work experience, and I got a little article in the paper, which was, I think, the most exciting thing that had ever happened to me in my entire life. So it was that sort of, so then the foot's in, and then you've got something to show and something to talk about in interviews. And I just kept doing that. I kept sort of knocking on doors in terms of when I was at university, I got in touch with the Leicester Mercury. In the end, I didn't go down the paper path. I got into broadcasting by meeting a journalist from Radio Leicester, where I first got a broadcasting job, which was purely accidental. I applied for a secretarial role at the BBC, thinking, well, that could give me an in. I've got a qualification in typing and shorthand. And I got a secretarial job for 6 months in the sports department. And then I was in. And then it was about being brave and talking to the people I was surrounded by and saying, can I have a go? And I would like to do this. Will you give me a chance? And because I was keen and enthusiastic and willing to learn, I was given a chance. And then you meet more people. And you will know in journalism, a lot of it's a very small world.
Yeah.
And lots of people know other people. And that was how I progressed. But you've got to be quite brave, and you've got to be willing to put yourself forward a little bit and not box yourself into a corner. But that was how I navigated that path at the very beginning.
And did you receive any rejection along the way? And how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I applied. I knew I wanted to do, I didn't want to do a journalism degree. And I think we're going to come to that shortly. I wanted to do an English degree because I love it. But then I wanted to get a journalism qualification. And I got knocked back from a couple of the colleges I applied for. And I was really sort of upset by that. And I thought, with the arrogance of youth, I've got this experience. Why wouldn't they want me? But, sometimes it's not your time. The main thing is you just have to keep barreling on and do what you're doing. And then I'm a great believer in that somewhere along the way, your chance does come if you put the effort in. And maybe it kind of wasn't meant to be. But there were times when it was like, no, you're not quite ready for this yet, or don't run before you can walk. And I listened to that advice very much. And I made sure that I got very good at the job I was doing before I then tried to move on to the next stage. That was important.
Yeah, I think one of the other important things, I mean, certainly in my journey, what I've learned is not to get too significant at knockbacks, not to take it to heart and carry it and live into that future of, oh, I feel so down and disempowered. It's like, right, that's what's happened. Next, move on.
It's really important because actually you learn along the way as well. And always getting feedback as well. If you do get a knockback, never be scared to ask why something didn't happen. You can learn from that too.
So you talked about the educational side of it. Do you think it's necessary to have a degree in journalism? Because I don't. I work my way up. How about you?
Yeah, I would almost say the contrary, because it kind of boxes you into a corner. And journalism is about reflecting life, and it's about reflecting the life around you. And if you're only, for example, if you do choose to go to university and you want to study something, I would always say study the thing you love the most, and then you can dedicate your sort of heart and soul to it. The actual journalism training bit can be done in just a few months, or learn on the job. It doesn't require 3 years learning to be a journalist. I really don't believe that at all. And I think bringing a little bit of life experience, if you're coming to this and you've been working somewhere else, you've worked in a pub, you work in a shop, you work in a cafe, it doesn't matter. You're bringing that to you're reflecting the world around you. So a little bit of knowledge of the world around you is a good thing. Never worry about not getting on a journalism course, because the technical qualifications, which are things like awareness of the law around reporting, how our courts work, the kind of how our local government works, you can learn all that further down the line. So my top advice is, if you're going to go to university for the expense, do something you absolutely love doing, that you're the most interested in, and then you'll get the most out of it. Then you can become a journalist.
Brilliant advice. And also, if you've got any hobbies or some interests, bring that to the table, because if you're a specialist, say about your football inside out, or about some other subject matter, then that is, I've got this mantra, Jo: show, not tell. So demonstrate what you can do. Don't just talk about it, like show people, and that will get you an in. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. And if you're good at, it's funny how a lot of journalistic types are often quite good at drama and things like that. A good way that some of my friends got in was writing reviews of plays for local papers, that kind of thing, or doing an online review if you love your films, and submit that somewhere. It's using what you love and what you're good at as a way in. It's that foot in the door. That's such a key thing of just getting your first bit of something published or broadcast. And if you do that related to something you love, a hobby, an interest, sport's a brilliant way in. It just gives you that little bit of advantage and a little bit of something you can talk about at an interview, which is critical.
Definitely. And talking about pathways, you just mentioned some different pathways, like writing a blog or sending in an article or a review or whatever that might be. I mean, the landscape's changed since we started. Online wasn't a thing back in the day. Now there's so many more opportunities. Can you talk about that?
That certainly gives you more opportunities now, and that you can use those interests. Specialism's a really good thing to do. But there are also lots of resources that you can use, that the big broadcasters and news organisations have just online. And if you go through, when you're sort of starting off your process, if you're wanting to get access to what's out there, there are all sorts of apprenticeships, training schemes, work experience programs that are put together by big publishers, broadcasters. ITV do them, BBC do them. They all have careers areas and pages. Read them, absorb them, use them, follow the advice on them, because they are there specifically to help people like you get that foot in the door. That is a phrase I will repeat, and I won't apologise for it, because
you don't have to. You don't have to.
Sort of in there, and they will bring you up to date with what's there. You can register on these sites as well, particularly the BBC's career page. They may even draw your attention to an area that you've not even considered before, or that might pique your interest. So like you do with anything else that you're preparing for, any exam you might prepare for, any project that you're doing, do your homework and do your research, and really have a big think about what it is you enjoy doing the most, because your working life is going to be a long time. You're going to be doing that job for a very long time, and you really need to enjoy it, and it needs to be something you can see yourself doing. So you need to really analyse yourself and work out, is my personality suited for this? Would I be a good broadcaster, or am I a bit shy? In which case, maybe I'd be a better writer for online articles or something like that. Telly's not for everybody, because there's a lot of appearance stuff. Radio is brilliant because you don't have to worry so much about that. Although the boundaries are changing now, and a lot of radio broadcasts are filmed. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cameras in radio studios now, and it's streamed live online.
But if you're someone who struggles with perhaps, you know, putting yourself out there physically, then perhaps there, you know, blogging might be a way forward, or podcasting, where you might need a publicity photo, but you don't necessarily have to be talking into a camera or something like that. So you really have to think about your personality. And you also, if you're wanting to go into news journalism, you have to be comfortable with doing old school stuff like phoning, using the phone. And you'd be amazed how many people are really uncomfortable about that now, because the phone is something you don't really use for calls very often.
Everything's so the distance, emails, online.
Exactly. And a lot of news journalism particularly is face to face, it's contact, it's actually physically picking a phone up and calling people and making connections that way. And if you're not comfortable doing that, or you find that sort of a bit excruciating, then think, okay, well, what else can I be doing? So you really have a good think about yourself, your personality, and what you feel comfortable doing. And the scrutiny as well of being on telly or on the radio or, you know, online. Are you comfortable with that? And do you mind that? And you have to think about that early doors.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you're on screen, you're going to be in a lot of people's houses.
You are.
People are going to then feel a connection with you and feel like they know you, even though they don't. And you know, that can be for some people uncomfortable, but I totally get what you're saying. And also what I'd just like to mention is the opportunities that you spoke of, whether it's, you know, the big broadcasters or newspapers on and offline these days, or whoever that might be, publications, like that's nationwide. It's not just a London centric thing. This is why I wanted to speak to you, because you're in Leicester. And I think a lot of youngsters who've contacted me have been worried that all the opportunities are in London. No, they're not. They're available up and down the country.
And the mood is changing massively, in that the big broadcasters are now expected to be out of London, and the move is north. You know, the BBC invested in Salford and broadcast centres in Manchester. Channel 4 are moving out of London as well, and they're moving up. Birmingham, they're going to Birmingham, I think. Anyway, and Leeds, there's a big sort of broadcast centre there. So no, it's location is less important now, and certainly London isn't seen as where you have to be. Not at all, not anymore.
Exactly. So now, look, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the breakfast show you work on at BBC Radio Leicester. Can you give us a brief insight into what that looks like? And if somebody wants to work on a breakfast show, what can they expect?
Okay, you can expect quite dark shadows under your eyes.
I've had those for years, I tell you.
The breakfast show is the flag show programme on any broadcasting outlet, and it is where that you have to work flipping hard and flipping fast as well, right at the start of the day, and you have to hit the ground running. So being an early person is certainly an advantage, but essentially what you're doing is you're setting, certainly at Radio Leicester, we are setting the news agenda for the day and also reflecting what's just happened too. So I get up, my alarm goes off at 4:30 every morning, 5 mornings a week, and I have to leap out of bed. No snooze button, that would be a disaster. And then my way of dealing with those hours is I get properly dressed and I put some makeup on as if I was going into an office to start work at 9 o'clock in the morning, because I have to feel like I'm a normal person.
Get into that mindset.
Job. It's really important as part of the mindset, because you're not going in, you don't go in your jammies and a hoodie. It's a workplace, and you've got to be right on it. And from the minute that I wake up in the morning and I switch 5 Live on to see what's been happening overnight, and I'm already thinking about the stories. I'll have checked online and seeing what's happened online overnight, if there's been any accidents or incidents or anything in Leicester that we need to know about. And the minute I get into the office at 5:15, I start writing. I sit down, I log in, and I'm writing my scripts for my 6 o'clock news. And sometimes I'll have been left some stuff, sometimes it's out of date. So I'm writing and writing and writing and writing, thinking, writing, checking, thinking, writing. And then the first bulletin is a 4-minute bulletin at 6 o'clock, where I sit down. It's a mixture of news and sport and weather. And it has to be a little encapsulation of everything that's happened. And boom, I'm on it. And then I have another bulletin at 6:30, where I have to sort of rewrite stuff to make it sound fresh. I do the same at 7, 7:30, 8, 8:30. And I read through on the hour until 12. But the breakfast show itself, I also contribute to the show. So I sit and go through the papers with the presenter on air. We had breaking news, for example, this morning. A big news story broke right in the middle of the show, and I just went in straight away. We interrupted everything that was happening, and I went and talked through what was happening and tried to explain the story to the listeners as quick as I could, even though I'd only heard about it 2 minutes previously.
But I wanted to talk about that a little bit more deeply, because breaking news, there's so much uncertainty working in news, because globally there's so much happening. Anything could happen. So even though you've written your script and you think, oh, good job done, doesn't mean anything, because the next minute it could be totally ditched and a new story put in its place. So can you talk about how you keep calm in that? Because it's quite a stressful situation.
It is stressful, and you know, particularly in broadcasting, your voice can give an awful lot away. So the most important thing to make sure before you break anything on air is to be absolutely certain and convinced it's true and real and happening and verified. And there's no point going on and just breathy rumours, go, well, I've heard this and I've heard that. That's no good. You have to. What will give you that little bit of confidence is knowing that something's true. If you only know 2 facts, just say those 2 facts. It's amazing how you can spin 2 facts out into a 3-minute
3-minute item. I know
exactly. But just stick to what you know, stick to the facts, and even if it's really, really short, it doesn't matter, because to the listener, they're up to date. They know something big's happened. I broke the news this morning. It was a political story. I was only in the studio for about 30 seconds, but it sounded we were right on it. And I only went in when I knew it was absolutely true, and that I had checked the sources and that it was verified, and it had been verified by a couple of sources. And when I knew that, I had the confidence to break it. And that is the joy of the job. There's nothing more exciting than when you have to throw the running order out of the window and you do something new. But you have to know when to stop. And when you know you come to the limit of your knowledge, not being tempted to make something up, say, right, that's it. I'll keep you up to date. I'll be in again if we've got anything to add. Boom, done.
Exactly. That's so critical. I think what you've just said is so critical. 1, the fact checking. You have to check your facts. 2, you can't embellish anything. This is the fact. This is what I know, and we'll keep you up to date throughout the program. That's it, you know. Exactly. Really, thank you for that. That was really insightful. Now, tell us, what's the best thing about the job? You said the excitement around breaking, new news, and what the challenging things about the job, apart from waking up so early.
The best things, I think, is my brain is constantly working. I take great pride in my writing news scripts very quickly, when you have to be clear, concise, crisp to the point, and immediately understandable, is a skill that it takes quite a while to learn. And when you master that skill, it's brilliant. And I'm always learning, and I find it intellectually massively satisfying, particularly when you've imparted some complicated information and managed to make it understandable. That side's brilliant. The really hard side is, as in any working environment, you're working very closely with quite a bunch of creative people. There can be tensions, and there's no room for that in a broadcast environment. You really, really have to work as a team and learn to work as a team, and that's not easy. And that's in any workplace in the land, it's the same thing, but it's particularly intense when you're all in a room together at 5 o'clock in the morning and it's busy.
I was going to say that early morning adds to the stress, doesn't it?
It does a bit, and it's hard work getting up. You know, if you get up occasionally to go on holiday at 4:30 in the morning, it's quite exciting and it doesn't feel too bad. Getting up very early relentlessly day after day,
and then straight onto the job, and straight having to write clear, concise, factual copy.
It's not easy, and you have to look after yourself, and you can't go out partying every night and then get up. You have to be really strict. You have to go to bed early. You have to sort of slightly moderate your drinking midweek to make sure that you look after yourself and that you're in a fit state. And it can be hard when you're dealing with stories which are really unpleasant. And COVID was quite hard going. I went in every day to the office for the entire pandemic. And after about 10 months of day in, day out, with COVID figures and deaths, and I found the Ukraine story really difficult and not very pleasant to be doing every morning. It can feel quite relentless. So you have to be able to slightly compartmentalize your work. And I often think, well, that's work, and when I go home I'll put something on Netflix, or I'll just do something completely different.
I think that's so important, because I think for journalists, having to deal with such difficult stories quite often, from war to COVID to whatever it might be, like you said, you have to take care of your well-being, especially your mental well-being, as well as your physical, you know. I mean, that's really great advice. So just to wrap up, Jo, I was wondering, what final kind of thoughts can you share in terms of anybody who wants to follow in your footsteps, whether it's broadcast journalism, whether it's print, and I use that very loosely because it's online as well, or whether it's radio, like what can you impart?
Okay, a couple of things that are really useful to know first is that you're not necessarily ever going to make tons of cash in journalism. It's a job that people tend to do more for the love of it. Starting salaries aren't great, and you'll see that straight away when you have a look and see it sort of at the entry level jobs. And progression money wise isn't brilliant, so you might just need to know that just right at the very beginning. If you're thinking you want to buy a flat or something one day, it's not massively sort of well paid.
It's not like the financial sector where they're earning six figures and within a year or two. It's not like that.
No, it's so you've got to be a little bit realistic about that. And the hours can be pants. You're working shifts. I mean, my earlies are shifts, but news happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You will be working public holidays, you work bank holidays, you work weekends. It's expected, because that's when it happens. So you just bear in mind that this ain't no 9 to 5. Those are the things just to have clicking away. Do your research though, because there are so many different opportunities, and it may be that you're not, you know, I've talked a lot about news and sort of hard news, but there's some wonderful different types of journalism out there. You know, if you love your sport, maybe you're really interested in business,
entertainment.
Absolutely. There's so much sort of whatever there is in life, someone's reporting on it. So there's a huge scope for your interests to be reflected, and for you to reflect people's interests like yours within that world. But if you do go down a formal training route, you will be doing sort of news, conventional news, which is all.
I think that's a good training ground, actually. And I would advocate anybody going to a newsroom really get to understand how to work under pressure, work fast, and how to write really tight copy, because if it's broadcast, especially TV, you've got to hold people's attention. And if you can't write lengthy copy with data and so on, like you would say on a blog or a print, you know, in print, it's got to be so precise and concise.
It really has.
Yeah. So listen, that's brilliant advice. And just before we say goodbye, because I would love to talk to you all day, but sadly our time is up. If people want to tune in to where you are, where can they find you? What do they need to do?
Well, it's BBC Leicester, so you can find us on BBC Sounds, and our schedules are on there, and you can listen back and see where we are and what we do. And also we have a presence online, of course. So BBC Leicester now is, all of our stories are tied in with online. It's massively expanding, not just within the BBC now, but within all broadcasters, is that the online offering is just tied like that, is meshed with radio, audio now, as more of it's called. So, but yeah, it's all there, and you can still find us online. You can still find us on the old-fashioned radios if you've got such thing. I bet you've got a car somewhere. 104.9 FM. It's still there.
There you go. 104.9 FM and online. Tune into Jo. She's a brilliant journalist, somebody to get some inspiration from. Jo, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you.